Hello everyone, my name is Joshua and this is the 187th video on my video journal series. Today's date is Friday the 14th of August 2026. How's everyone been? I've been pretty good, thank you. And yes, I know, Friday the 14th sounds eerie, doesn't it? Well, today was actually a pretty good day. Obviously, I did my photography thingamajig for one of my uni assessments. I did a portrait feature piece of someone and we basically went to a bunch of areas in the Sydney CBD and I took photos of them in various poses in front of various buildings. But something I noticed was that obviously I had to carry around a very hefty bag with me to keep all my photography equipment, my camera. Obviously, it isn't mine; it's property of the university, which is why I had to take extra care of it. But it added like an extra 10 to 12 kilos, at least it felt like that. And I also had to carry around my laptop case in my regular backpack. So all that added extra weight really just strained my right arm. And to a lesser extent, my left arm, which had my like laptop bag, and also my back. But going around the Sydney CBD on paper sounds quite easy. It's in mostly like a grid format. Um, there's plenty of transport options. Trains, metro, buses, light rail, uh, ferries. But I didn't catch a ferry. But I ended up just like walking pretty much everywhere. Because if I were to take the tram along George Street, I'll be pretty much packed shoulder to shoulder next to a lot of people and having a very expensive piece of technology that I didn't want to get damaged. Um, and obviously, every time I go into the city, I just notice how like busy everything is. All right, CBD, downtown, it's going to be busy. But on paper, it sounds like just a few blocks down, and there's my location. Nothing bad should happen, really. It should be an easy sort of task. Well, in Sydney, Sydney isn't really a well, what you call it, a normal city. Sydney is a pretty weird city, and I'll just be talking about the Sydney CBD today. But this can apply to other areas of Sydney as well. In the CBD, at least, the topography is like pretty wild, especially around Circular Quay. Circular Quay Station is basically, um, top level a highway, middle level train station, and then below is just all shops, right? That's just an example. Um, but even just like walking along George Street, the main street, you got the main light rail, which is also like a pedestrian sort of walk, and then you got all these like businesses, but then like special vehicles are allowed, so sometimes you got to watch out for the occasional truck or car, and because they had to like alter the streets so much to accommodate the light rail, sometimes you got cars coming this way and then dead end street over here. I mean, honestly, it'll be a nightmare to drive in the CBD nowadays, but even to walk, um, walking on the hard concrete pavement, trying to dodge people, some people walking on the left, some people walking on the right, some people just stand there, you gotta like sort of get around them, especially when you got all that added extra weight, in your hands, makes that really hard. And if you're, I guess, not native to Sydney, if you come from anywhere else but Sydney, and it's your first time visiting this city, you realize how much of our city doesn't really make any sense. It's much like London, we just added streets as we went on, and we're like, all right, it'll fix itself. Turns out it didn't. That's why I'm like envious of New York, right? They just got a grid, easily um, navigatable. But here in Sydney, we're like, all right, let's just put like school roads everywhere. For pedestrians, that's like also pretty much a burden. Yet again, I said in the CBD, it is somewhat structured, but even trying to like navigate the footpaths, because the footpaths are like very narrow because they were built like a very long time ago, um, and combined with all the other factors, pedestrian crowds, traffic, it really is hard to navigate the CBD sometimes, and you know I guess it's just like my little personal rant. But I feel like some people can relate to this, especially where you got like you know, other things like planned demonstrations, street closures. Sometimes like they close off train stations during like major events. So you're like, all right, well, if it's like an event like Vivid, for instance, or New Year's Eve fireworks, um, they sometimes close off Circular Quay station, so you pretty much have to walk to one of the major city stations or back to Central. Um, Obviously, it's all part of crowd control, and obviously, it's like a very, very big event, but Sydney, I guess, or that area wasn't really made to accommodate all that people, if you know what I mean, even if it's just like something that happens once a year. Oftentimes in Sydney, it will actually be quicker to walk between two stations than to wait for a train. Like if you want to, I don't know, catch a train from like Town Hall to Wynyard, there's a lot of services, um, and the train trip itself isn't too long, but if you want to maybe like catch a train from, let's say, I don't know, or if you want to, I guess, catch a train from like Martin Place to Circular Quay, if you were to do it by train, you have to basically catch a train from Martin Place to Town Hall, and then change from Town Hall all the way and go to Circular Quay. When realistically, it would actually be like quicker to walk that distance. And even sometimes during like off peak hours, I often find it just a lot more easier to walk between, I don't know, Town Hall and Wynyard because it's such a short walk anyway, at least like 10 minutes or so. And sometimes you can wait up to like 10 minutes for a train to come if it's off peak. So that's another thing about Sydney. It's often like sometimes quicker to just walk the distance and rather take like public transport. I pretty much know like zero people who take um, a bus from one end of the CBD to another. Like if you're taking a bus in the Sydney CBD, you often like taking a bus. You board on the bus in the CBD and you're taking it to like one of the outer suburbs or inner city suburbs. You don't really like go from like I don't know Circular Quay to like Town Hall or Central via bus. Maybe before the George Street light rail, maybe you did, but like um, yeah, because with buses you got to wait like a while. Services, even though it's in the CBD, can be infrequent or not frequent enough. You even got to wait like up to I don't know. Um, there are like some services which run on a frequency of one in every 10 minutes, which is like pretty good. Don't get me wrong for a bus, but those services can be packed, and I don't know, one in every 10 minutes for a bus. Like it does sound good. I wish I had that near where I live, but you know, at the same time, it's not really turn up and go. Turn up and go frequency for a bus would be like every 5 minutes. So yeah, often enough, like buses, even though they can be like a little bit more direct than trains, I guess it's just frequency. And even with ferries, like I passed by a ferry wharf today, and I saw, oh yeah, next ferry to Circular Quay will be like 30 minutes. Ferries during off peak, they're pretty like bad in terms of frequency. They can be like once in every 30 minutes, which can easily be done in less time via train or bus. So if you want to go from like, I don't know, Milson's Point Wharf to, I know I'm talking about Milson's Point when I said the Sydney CBD, but I'm just going to use this as an example. If you want to go from Milson's Point Wharf to Circular Quay, that's a ferry wide. That's like 3 minutes, but you have to wait up to like half an hour during off peak. Meanwhile, you can just walk to Milson's Point train station, which is like I don't know, like an 8 minute walk, not even 5 minutes. Wait for a train, maybe max 10 minutes, and then the train ride itself. It won't drop you off exactly at Circular Quay, but it'll get you to Wynyard. But I bet you will save like a few minutes more than the ferry, and the ferries are always so packed because it's filled with tourists. So even trying to like make a short distance via ferry, it is kind of hard because you're like literally squished between crowds. And I've even talked about like train cancellation delays, which just add more fuel to the fire. And obviously, CBD is a pretty busy place. You expect this sort of thing, but it does. I guess complicate things for me sometimes. Um, Due to the fact that I also like walking. I often prefer walking short distances, and maybe I should consider taking a train, even if it's from one part of the CBD to another. But sometimes travel within the CBD can be sluggish, sort of unpleasant, and just plain and simple overcrowded. And oftentimes I often found it would be a lot easier in certain situations to just walk the distance instead of waiting for public transport. And to some extent, I also experienced this in like Auckland and Wellington when I went to New Zealand. Mind you, beautiful cities. They have pretty good transport, considering their population. But then there's like some areas of their CBDs which are not really served well by public transport or just like buses. And you often have to walk like a pretty long distance from a train station to get to that point. Like to get to the Auckland Museum, right? The Central Museum slash War Memorial in Auckland. It's a pretty like fair walk from the nearest train station. I forgot what the train station is called. Um, and that's just an example. Here in Sydney, if you want to get to even like the Sydney Opera House, right? You got to get off at Circular Quay, then you got to like walk a bit. There is no ferry wharf or train station at the Opera House. You got to walk, which is better for your foot, but it does make it somewhat inconvenient if I guess it's for one-off events and all that. But if you just want to visit it once, you're like, oh, why do I have to walk so long? Just to visit the Opera House. Why can't it just be a ferry walk? But no, because it'll kill off all the businesses along there. And it's a pretty nice walk. I don't mind it. Not something I'll do like every day or every time I'm in the city. Just like one-offs. And yeah, like obviously, I can understand, you know, um, why sometimes these sorts of things exist, like very long walks. Obviously, the walk to the opera house, right? It's for crowd control. Because I feel like if there was a train station or ferry stop right next to the Sydney Opera House, that just result in a lot of overcrowding. So you kind of want to put like a walkway, sort of pedestrian zone, which I can understand. But even trying to get to you know, botanical gardens, right? It is a pretty fair walk from Circular Quay Station, and due to the fact that I guess the city circle, right, the underground railways, each station was built at a different time. Um, you know, you kind of like, well, it is it is convenient if you're using a line that goes around the city circle, but if you want to go from Circular Quay to Martin Place is, on a completely different tunnel. So often be, just quicker to walk between those two stations. Um, and obviously, you got like Sydney Metro, which is its whole another tunnel that goes through the Sydney CBD. But yeah, it can be a little bit, I guess, troublesome if you're looking to travel from a very specific spot to another very specific spot that isn't very well connected via like short term or like short distance, I should say, short distance transport, And I think, from all I've said, the Sydney CBD is quite good for trains and rail access. You got some pretty big stations in there. But for like buses and all that, I feel like there should be, I guess, like more more frequent buses in the CBD area. I know you can only fit like so much, but I feel like buses are heavily underutilized in Sydney, except for like some few key routes, like the Triple Free to Bondi Beach. I know that one's like pretty packed, but that should really become like a light rail line to Bondi Beach, in my opinion. Or like any of the North Shore buses, the one that goes to Montevideo, but really that should be a railway line. But yeah, like I feel like buses could have great advantage in just taking you from one area of the CBD to another, and it will certainly help me a lot. Where you know I got a lot of things with me. I got like a lot of hefty luggage. I don't want to have to like navigate through train stations. I just want to wait at a bus stop, hop on a bus, and travel from I don't know like Circular Quay to Town Hall or Central. And I know I can do that, right? I know there are like bus routes that sort of yet again, I'm not like a bus nerd or anything, but I know there's plenty of transport options within the CBD. I'm just saying that sometimes when things are packed and you got so many options around you, you can't really like make a decision. You're just looking at the bus map, going like, all right, well, there's like 1,000 routes that go this route. Just like which one do I take? Sort of which one's like the faster one. Um, I really miss. I'm really gonna bring this up. I really miss Sydney's old tram network. Sydney used to have a very big tram network up until the early '60s before we knocked it all down. But I feel like Sydney was very much a city built for the tram. Um, very much trams are like a short distance modes of transport, and I feel like a lot of areas in Sydney, right, especially within the CBD, were particularly built for trams. Just to carry people maybe just a couple of blocks down. And obviously, you can easily make that journey via bus, though sometimes um, buses are like subject to local traffic, and you get all the complications I mentioned earlier. And obviously, there's light rail, the George Street light rail, which is sort of like reviving, um, just a small sort of fragment of Sydney's tram network. It is a pretty good light rail line. The L2 and L3, they're pretty good light rail lines. But um, they can get overcrowded, and you know, you do have to wait up to like 5 minutes, which is yet again pretty good. Um, but it's pretty much the only like light rail option within the CBD, the main CBD area. And I guess to someone who isn't from Sydney watching this video, might be very confused to what I'm saying. But so I do get carried away with these things. But just let you know, I guess like the main sort of message I'm just trying to make here is that even though you're spoilt for transport options, sometimes just trying to get from like a very specific area to another, even in those well-serviced areas, can be a little bit tough. Due to a combination of factors like overcrowding, just deciding which options right for you, and the fact that sometimes during off-peak frequencies can be low enough where it will just be sometimes quicker to walk or run that distance. And I think within the CBD proper there needs to be more, I guess, short distant transport options. I guess you can't really add more modes of transport. Rather, maybe you can like you know add more, I guess, uh, bus services, or maybe bus routes that just cover the city in like a circle, sort of like sort of like a city circle for buses. I know that sounds like pretty weird, but you know, I- yeah, again, like ask anyone, how do you navigate the Sydney CBD? They'll most probably say by foot, or via train, light rail. Not many people will say buses though. Um, and obviously, like I mentioned, Sydney had a pretty extensive tram network. Same with most cities around Australia, and even in places like the United States, for instance. And that was how people travelled via short distances, a few city blocks. But once you tore those trams up, you put um, buses and all that, and they don't really have that same sort of advantage as trams. Um, trams can run along their own dedicated path. Buses they can, but you just gotta add extra bus lanes, and even then, they're still gonna wear that traffic lights and all that. Less capacity. I can go on, but yeah. So I think it does kind of suck, especially when with a large group of people, and even if they might not be walkers per se, and you just want to, like, I don't know, catch a ferry from Circular Quay to Luna Park, have a fun day out. But then you realize, oh yeah, the ferry's overpacked, even though we're just going like one stop. Um, and some areas in the Sydney CBD, some like key landmarks, you do have to walk a fair bit to get to them. And to really like end off this video, yet again, I'm not really any transport planner, but and obviously I do enjoy the walk. I don't mind walking, but in some scenarios it can be a little bit inconvenient, and sometimes transport here in Sydney can be sluggish, especially when things don't go right. If there's like a train strike or train delay, I think today actually there was a some form of a train delay in the CBD area, one of the railway lines. And I was just like, all right, well, how will these factors account for me trying to get from one place to another? Luckily, it didn't really affect me too much. But, it is annoying when these things happen, and pretty much walking's your only option. Or, catching a bus, but even then, buses can get overcrowded, especially you know, let's say somewhere like University of New South Wales, right? A pretty big university, one of the top, I don't know, I think like 50 universities in the world. Um, but your only transport option there is the light rail, and yet again, it's in Randwick. It's not in the CBD, but fits my point. Light rail and bus, and light rail is only a new addition, right? Before then, you had to catch a bus, and um, I've heard from people that the buses then and even now get insanely overcrowded because you have like thousands of students trying to go to school all at once. And the light rail, the L2 and L3 that go to UNSW, get insanely packed. Um, and you'll figure out like, oh, one of the top universities in the world, why don't they have better transport options? Um, at least University of Sydney is like next or within close proximity to Redfern stations, within walkable distance. I mentioned the Sydney Opera House. It's within walkability of Circular Quay Station. Um, and there's plenty of like examples I can think of, and you know, I guess it's just due to me becoming too much like an old man. Like, I like walking, but sometimes it's excuse me, sometimes it is a little bit infuriating, especially when you're in a rush. You know, um, and yeah. But apart from that, I like living in Sydney. I like all the transport options that we have. Even if it means some days where I'll be having to carry around an entire village on my back. At least we got transport, unlike some other cities. And Australia can really be a hit and miss when it comes to public transport. Major cities, Sydney, Melbourne, have pretty extensive transport networks. Even in Perth, Perth are building up this system really well. Um, but even in cities like Adelaide, for example, Adelaide is almost like a tale of two cities. Like half the city is served by trains, the other half is like by buses. And Adelaide was one of those cities where it actually had a pretty extensive tram network. Same with Sydney, but then they knocked theirs down. Oh wait, all but one line, the Glenelg line. All right, I don't want to be corrected about that in the comments. I know Adelaide technically kept their trams, but it was just one line. All right, I know that. But you get what I mean. There's like sort of missing gaps, even if it's within like a major sort of urban built-up area like the CBD or downtown, as the Americans like to call it. And yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to say. Yet again, if you're like a transport planner watching this, maybe extend the light rail line that goes to Circular Quay. Maybe extend it like all the way down to Martin Place and sort of make like a balloon loop around the city. It'll make it a lot easier trying to get to those areas because now you have to like walk it depends where you're getting off, but they're very like sort of disunified, if you know what I mean. And I'm pretty sure there's like a bunch of areas in and around the city centre that could really do some improvement. Another example, I'm just going to end with this example, can be Moore Park, um, which is a major sports and entertainment precinct. And I know Central Station's like nearby. It's like, I don't know, 15-minute walk away. But most people, they catch the tram, and even though there's like a light rail line that goes through the precinct, it gets insanely overcrowded. And the area was once served by various tram routes of Sydney's former tramway network. Then they all shut down, and they're like, all right, well, buses and you know, even though you have like stadiums that can fit like thousands, tens of thousands, like up to 100,000 people, you just still only have buses. That's pretty much the scenario. You got the light rail, you got buses. Why not build a train station near there? There's yet again plenty of examples. Bondi Beach. That could really use a railway line, relieve congestion off the 333 bus, and I guess within the CBD proper there could be some improvement, and or to make it so then my legs don't hurt as much sometimes. Or maybe I just need to stop walking far distances. Maybe just do more short walks rather than long. But anyway, yet again, I want to hear your opinions. Maybe in the city that you live, do you find that it's sometimes difficult, especially where you're carrying a lot of things to move from point A to point B? Like some, I don't know, missing transport links or maybe pedestrian infrastructure. I'll really be interested to hear it. And yeah, I know I've been blabbing on this entire video. Maybe some of you have fallen asleep, but I don't blame you. Watch my YouTube videos while you're falling asleep. It always works. Well, yeah, I don't mind. And, but it's something that I'm really, I guess, sort of passionate about. I can really like blab on about local knowledge, list every freaking bus route in Sydney or all the major train lines, But, that's something I want to, I guess, sort of archive my thoughts. And yet again, though, Sydney's a, very much rapidly changing city, like Town Hall Square, for instance, not the old Town Hall Square, the new one that they want to build. That's a major project that's being considered right now. They want to demolish a bunch of buildings and build this new plaza right in front of Sydney Town Hall. There's like, I even seen like plans to like hypothetical plans to demolish Circular Quay Station, build it underground and create this new park precinct. I doubt it's going to happen, but you never know the future. And yeah, just something I want to archive and document and share with you. But anyway, that's enough of me talking, and I guess I'll catch you all next time. Bye, see you, take care. Catch you all tomorrow.